Congressman, thank you for joining. You tweeted two things yesterday we're super interested in talking to you about. First, guys, put up 103A, please. This was your account of what happened to you in the wake of Tuesday's speech by the president and your party's reaction in the chamber. Jim Barrett, a flight attendant, politely chased me down at Chicago airport. Quote, "Sir, I'm a Democrat, but the way the party behaved was embarrassing, made us look heartless. I don't care who is up there. You stand for the boy with cancer. Be more rational and get your act together." Next one, please. And then your follow-up tweet, 103B, please. I replied that a few of us did stand and clap, and we must be the party that still believes in kindness, decency, and trying to bring people together. So there's at least three themes and issues I can think of, not to be critical or petty or gossipy or anything negative, but just to think about the party. One is the leadership's relationship to the caucus, because leadership was not happy in retrospect with what happened. Two is the issue of how folks behaved in not standing for the most part. You and a few others did on occasion. And three is this question of where does the party stand on issues where Donald Trump seems to have the upper hand? So just explain why you tweeted what you did and how you feel the productive things can be done going forward after Tuesday.
Well, look, I felt that we should have stood when the president walked in, and some of us did. In my view, we should have had the escort committee. I mean, there's some basic norms. Stand when for the firefighter who was killed in the Pennsylvania rally, stand for the boy with cancer. But I was surprised. I mean, I was at O'Hare Airport and someone came, oh, you're the congressman from California. Usually when that happens, it's because they saw me on Bill Maher. I mean, it's the one thing that people recognize. And I thought he was going to say, oh, I saw you on Maher. And he's like, I got to tell you, I was really embarrassed by how you guys behaved. I'm a Democrat. I've got family who are conservative, and they were texting me the whole time. And all they were talking about is, how could you be so heartless and not stand up for the boy with cancer? And then he said, I don't care who's up there. You guys stand up for the boy with cancer and get your act together. Act a little bit more rational. I mean, and I'm still a Democrat. I'm still going to vote for you, blah, blah, blah. But, he was very polite about it and just very disappointed. And I think that our party needs to realize two things. One, we will get further in our critiques of Donald Trump on firing veterans, on cutting Medicaid, on tariffs, blanketly applied, if we show that we have some decency and some willingness to support where we agree. I got criticized. I went to the First Lady's roundtable a day before the joint address, and the bill that she is championing is to take down sexually explicit AI-generated images from the internet. And I was invited, I think, because I represent Silicon Valley and supported the bill. It passed 100-0 in the Senate, and no Democrat, not the authors of the bill, showed up. And I was the only Democrat. I mean, why not just support common sense things and criticize Trump where it makes sense to criticize him? It just seems to be more effective. The final point on this, Mark, is imagine how sad it's going to be if we set a precedent that now when we have a Democratic president, which we one day will, that the Republicans don't escort him in. Or imagine if the Republicans just don't show up and you now have the presidents in this country speaking to just half a chamber. I mean, that's not the country that I want.
Dan.
Congressman, to what extent do you think this is strictly about Trump versus upset about his policies? Like, has the party, in your opinion, moved, kind of reconciled that, or are they still one and the same?
I think that they recognize that he won. He clearly this time won the 7 states and he won the popular vote. There is understandable deep frustration and concern with his unconstitutional actions. I mean, the reality is he is defying courts. He hasn't defied the Supreme Court yet. We started this conversation that what happens if he's pressuring a Supreme Court justice or people around him are pressuring a Supreme Court justice. I mean, we're not living in normal times of a president's authority. I just don't think that doing things like not standing for a boy with cancer or not showing up to the State of the Union or this joint address is the way to challenge that. There are a lot of other ways that we can make our case. So to me, it just makes us look ineffective and petty. So it's not. But the critique I got, and people can see it on the tweet, is, oh, Khanna doesn't recognize the moment, and he doesn't recognize what's at stake, and that's why people don't speak out, because probably 30 to 40% of the comments I got were negative, and he's not tough enough, and that's what explains why more people didn't stand.
Do you think I was going to say, do you think they realize that they made Trump look like the bigger and more empathetic person, which in my opinion is very hard to do? Like, just the defiance of the party made Trump look bigger and gracious.
I don't think that's fully set in. I do think when the boy went to the Oval Office and gave Trump a hug, that is something that people have noticed. But I think it was not strategically the best way, and we had some momentum actually coming into the speech, because veterans were organically going to town halls. I mean, one of the things and people don't realize is a third of federal workers are veterans, a third, and that was really upsetting people. And then these Medicaid cuts were upsetting people. And regardless of where you are on tariffs, and I think tariffs sometimes are necessary, sometimes they're not, the chaos of how Trump was doing this was upsetting people. And so I feel like, we for 2 months after Trump won, we basically had our tail between our legs, didn't know what was going on. Finally, Trump sort of overreaches, in my view, and we have some organic momentum. And this week, and what happened with the State of the Union, we became the story again, and not Trump's actions. And that, in my view, wasn't effective.
Sean.
Yes, sir. This is the first time I've ever woken up and been excited to talk about somebody's tweets. So thank you for being here. And I think that your comments are spot on. I mean, the idea as a strong conservative and big Republican, I think we need a loyal opposition. And it's kind of what I wanted to get at, which is there's a lot of talk in the trades, the political trades, about the leadership of the Democratic Party, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer or whomever. And it was sort of interesting. One of the analysis was like, people were getting upset in your caucus about the smaller group that took attention away. They were upset with them, but they were almost equally upset with the leadership that allowed it to happen. And so I guess my question to you is that, do you think that there's a lack of strong leadership? Back in the Pelosi days, you can say what you will about Nancy Pelosi, but she governed with an iron fist. And I don't get that sense that the rank and file in the Democratic caucus are looking at Hakeem Jeffries or Kathleen Clark and saying, guys, we can't cross them.
Well, I think Hakeem's success in the last cycle, was he kind of let Democrats find their own voice. He didn't govern with a iron fist, and on very controversial issues of Israel or Palestine, or issues about criticizing Joe Biden. Hakeem's view was, people can find their own voice. I'm going to be unified, and he was very well liked. I still think he is very well liked in the caucus, across the caucus. But the challenge is now with Trump, he really is the leader. I mean, I know people say, who is the leader of the Democratic Party? It's not whatever you think of, Josh Shapiro, Andy Bashir, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. They're not the leaders. They may one day be the leaders. Right now, the leader of the Democratic Party are our congressional leadership. And I have a lot of respect for Chuck Schumer as a legislator, but in terms of a younger, dynamic voice, that's Hakeem. So is
he strong? I mean, I guess the question is, you said he's well liked, and I'm sure he is, but there's a difference. And I that story in Politico was like the part of your caucus is upset that outburst, and Dan referred to it, overshadowed Trump, his speech and his policies. But a Pelosi would have never let that happen.
Well, I'm not sure Pelosi could have stopped every single member from what they were going to say, but Pelosi may have made it clearer what our guidelines were. And I think next time, at least my recommendation to leadership will be send an escort committee, make it clear that we should stand, that you will stand, we will stand for the president, we'll stand for the first lady. We're going to stand for stories in the gallery, which from common sense, if it feels like you're choking up or you're feeling emotional about something, stand up. I mean, it's sort of common sense, and I think those guidelines, in my view, will be given next time. But I agree with you. Like, look, this is a moment where I think Hakeem actually has more latitude than maybe he even realizes. People want to be led, and I think we will give him a latitude if he says, "Look, this is the direction we're going in." I do believe we have a very good chance that he becomes speaker, just by the law of gravity and Trump's overreach. But I think he's got to find that voice, and I hope next State of the Union we have a different approach to it.
Congressman, the other tweet you did that we want to talk to you about, the first two we did didn't surprise any of us. This one surprised us, so we'd love to understand why you did it. Your friend Gavin Newsom, in a conversation on his new podcast with Charlie Kirk, seemed to take a new position that it was unfair for trans athletes to compete in girls sports. So here's what Congressman Khanna tweeted in response to someone, Alex Lee, reacting negatively to what Governor Newsom said. You said, "This is the moment for Democrats to stand for the dignity of the trans community, the immigrant community, and the most vulnerable. I've always admired my Assemblyman, Alex Lee." Is it possible to have the position that your governor seems to, that it's not fair for trans athletes to participate in female sports and still show dignity to immigrants and the trans community? Are those things in conflict or not?
I think people could have different opinions on it, but I guess I was confused by the governor's position, given that California's law is that we do not allow school districts to ban trans youth from participating in sports. That's the law that Jerry Brown signed in 2013. So is from the governor's comments, my understanding was that he was opposed to that law, and I guess I view this as a issue that state by state, local school districts, sports by sports can decide, but we should not have a federal ban. And he was implying in that interview, at least the excerpts I saw, that he was for a ban, and I guess maybe he'll clarify it. But does that mean he was for? Would he have voted with the Senate Republicans for a federal ban? Is he saying that we should repeal California's 2013 law that Jerry Brown signed? Because currently the law in California is that school districts cannot ban trans athletes.
If you were the governor of California and a repeal of that law came to your desk, would you sign it?
I would not, but I would not. I believe that this is an issue. There are 500,000 NCAA athletes at the collegiate level. There are about 10 who are trans. My view is that a lot of trans youth are playing on these things not in a very competitive way, but for belonging. And I would say let the school districts, schools figure this out, sport by sport, and with the athletic associations. We shouldn't have a blanket ban on it. That's it. I wouldn't demonize the other side. I say I understand their concerns of safety. I understand that what your concerns are on fairness. And I also don't think we should have sort of genital examinations. But I think there's nothing wrong, in my view, of talking to the other side, respecting where they're coming from. I understand my position on this is probably a 30-70 position. But I guess my own view is you take positions and then you stick to them, and unless they're facts that change your mind and you disagree with the other side with respect. I think what surprised people with the governor, and he'll have to explain, is it seemed to me he was agreeing with Charlie Kirk, and that means that law that Jerry Brown signed in 2013, apparently he disagrees with it.
So it's great, and one of the reasons we like you so much is you're straightforward and you're honest. You're saying you're at a principle. You personally are supporting a position that's hugely unpopular, right?
It is unpopular, certainly in terms of the polling I've seen. That
Right.
it's a
Okay.
30-70 position.
And the governor talked with the conversation with Charlie Kirk very openly about how much he thought the issue hurt Kamala Harris's chances of winning the election. Right? Do you agree with him on that? That issue hurt her chances?
And we may disagree with this, but my sense is, and I could be wrong, that ad would not have been nearly as effective on Bernie Sanders, whatever else you think of Bernie Sanders, because people thought if Bernie Sanders got to the presidency, what he'd really focus on is people who've been screwed by the economic system and making sure that they had health care and they had higher wages. I think the challenge with Kamala Harris was that people didn't know what her focus would be. And the ad was effective not as much on the particular issue, though I acknowledge it was a 30-70 issue. But what was the ad saying? That she's going to be more focused on them, meaning on those issues, than on the fact that we don't have factories, that on the fact that wages have stagnated, that people don't have health care. So do I think that this is an issue that is a politically less popular issue for Democrats? Absolutely. Does Donald Trump take politically unpopular positions, like let's pardon January 6th folks, and I mean, all the crazy positions he's taken? Yeah, but he takes a lot of 30-70 positions, but people know that's what he believes. He doesn't flip-flop on core things, and in which he believes. And I don't think the issue is whether you take a 30-70 position. I think it's, do people think you are actually saying what you believe, and are you respectful of people who may disagree, and where are your priorities?
I want to turn it over to Sean, but just name a position you think Donald Trump is 30-70 on that he stands with.
Pardoning January 6th folks who
Good.
police.
Yeah, gun control.
Good
I mean,
example.
There's a
Good
no,
example.
not gun
Good example. All right, Sean.
Not gun control. It's
Hold-
80-20.
I've got one random that I want to ask you, Dan. If you want to stay on topic, I'll go second.
No, I mean, I think, Congressman, how do you know, the party's talking about we need to move forward, and there's so much energy in the base, right? Which is what kind of has fueled Tuesday night a little bit. You know, how do you feel? Like, have you heard from members of the caucus since last night? I mean, is there a feeling that the people are ready to kind of stand on principle and push back, or does this issue still divide the caucus, you think?
This issue, meaning the
trans issue.
Oh.
I mean, sorry. Are we going to a different?
No,
No.
that's
I
fine.
didn't know. Sorry, you should.
Maybe another way to say it, because I'm trying to be respectful, because we know we're going to lose you soon here. Is your sense that the caucus agrees with you more, or agrees with Governor Newsom more?
My sense is that the caucus's position on this is it should not be a federal ban. There should not be state bans. That local folks, UBU, sort of local communities can decide, local school districts, local athletic associations can decide sport by sport, case by case. Is a sort of federalism, a reverse of what.
Oh, I like this. So you, local control. I like.
Yes.
Okay, let's keep
My
going.
sense is
That's what Senator Baldwin is
That's
pushing
Tammy
to.
Baldwin. Yep.
And it's an incredible, with all I say respectfully, it's an incredible dodge. But you at least have the courage to say what your position is on the local. If it were up to you on the local, you would allow them to play.
Up through high school, from K through 12, yes. I mean, obviously after high school, and even in high school, I would look at it sport by sport with fairness. But I would be very deferential to the
sport by sport or athlete by athlete.
Well, both. I mean, I think there has to be a standard of fairness, which you know, I mean, I don't want to get into all the details, but my understanding is that you have to be on actual hormone therapy. There's some standards of fairness. I mean, there has to be. Look, there's this a value of inclusion, and then there's a value of safety and fairness. Those are not. Those are both important values. I believe that you should not have a statewide ban. We don't in California. That school districts with athletic associations should be making these decisions. But that most times, in 99% of the cases, the trans athlete in question is not violating the fairness. I mean, we hear of these cases at the extremes. I don't think that's what's going on in my community. So my view is that that it contributes more to the demonization or the stereotyping of these trans kids were a very small part of the population.
Can I just ask you, this is off topic, but there's a question, there's a quote in Playbook this morning that it's timely. So your colleague, Jim Himes from Connecticut, and this is not partisan. So he says, this is a direct quote from him. There's no question that somewhere between 6 and a dozen of my colleagues are at a point where they don't have the faculties to do their job. Do you agree with that?
Wow. I wouldn't, I don't know 6 or 7, but maybe I'm not talking though. I guess I would have to know
You know, three?
who they were. I mean, I was one who said Feinstein should not have been in the Senate at a time where she wasn't showing up, and so it would depend on who he's talking to.
I know.
About.
I'm just saying that's a bigger number. It's one thing to say one, right, or two, but when you say between 6 and a dozen, that's a pretty big number of members of Congress that, quote, don't have their faculties together or to do their job as the direct quote. So I mean, that to me shocked me that it's, like I said, it's one if there's a one off or a two off that everybody kind of knows but doesn't say anything. But to suggest that up to a dozen members of Congress don't have their faculties to do their job seems like a rather large number. And I didn't.
It's a large number, and it's a low bar, right, for Congress. You got to go vote something. You're not talking about nuclear engineers. I haven't seen that. I mean, I'm a straightforward guy. If you ask me about specific people, I mean, maybe I'm not thinking about it that Jim has in mind. I mean, Jim's a very smart guy. He's a Rhodes Scholar, so maybe they don't measure up to him. But it depends on who he's talking about.
Put up the Peggy Noonan quote, please. Congressman, I really want you to react to what Peggy wrote. And Peggy's premise of her column today is the country needs a strong Democratic Party, that she's cheering for the Democrats to come back. And she said basically that the Democratic Party is too stupid to change. The party isn't based on Tuesday night. This isn't serious people. Their job was to show an alternative. They'll continue to lose for a long time. You're thinking a lot about how to keep the party from losing for a long time. Do you think Tuesday night was an aberration or an indication of a fundamental problem, as Peggy does and I do?
Well, look, I think we often have recency bias. Anytime someone wins, we think, okay, they're going to have a long time majority. I mean, people after January 6th thought that Trump would never come back, and 4 years later, he wins every swing state. So I think the one constant in current American politics is people are pretty upset at the status quo, and the alternative party often has a chance. And I'm actually quite hopeful about the Democratic Party. That said, we need to have certain things that we course correct to deserve victory. And I guess the one thing I would say is we don't have to copy, in my view, the most extreme behaviors. I mean, with Ronald Reagan, used to say, character is king. One of the things people liked about him, one of the things they liked about George W. Bush is they just came up, or certainly I think about Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or most of our leaders, they come off as decent people. They come off as kind people. They come off as people who have empathy. They're self-deprecating often. And I just think most people are like that. You grow up, they want you to be patriotic. They want you to be decent. They want you to be kind. They want you to look for certain common ground. It's not complicated. Now, Donald Trump gets away with insulting John McCain. Fine. He's a phenom. It worked for him. Didn't work for DeSantis. Don't think it's going to work for Vance. Don't think it's going to work for anyone else. And so my view is that the Democratic Party should be the party that says, we're going to get back to decency. We're going to get back to inspiration, bringing people together. We're going to show an alternative to Trumpism.
Congressman, I know Congressman's got to go, but real quick, you and your boys are fans of the Warriors, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Want to show you Steph Curry from last night in case you didn't see it before you go and just react to this.
That was the goal when you were down 22. Steph from midcourt. Oh, come on! Did he ghost him on that too? Oh my goodness, Curry!
Celebratory. Congressman, we know we need to go. We kept you an extra minute. Apologize for that. Grateful to you for coming on and explaining all that in your normal forthright manner. And we welcome you back to Two-Way anytime your schedule allows.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Take care.